There's this assumption about famous funny people that whenever they get up in public and say funny things, that's just them being their naturally funny selves. Now, sometimes this is the case, but most of the time, there's a writer behind them doing the spade work of writing the jokes. And for more than 4 decades, if you were a star, the guy that you'd call if you wanted to say something amusing in public has been Bruce Vilanch. Not only did Bruce become the regular writer for a lot of people who were famous for being funny, like Robin Williams, Bette Midler, Billy Crystal, and Whoopi Goldberg, he also became the must-get scriptwriter for award shows, benefits, Liz Taylor's 65th birthday party, anything where a bunch of famous people have to get up and say funny things, he did. And eventually, as all writers yearn to do, Bruce came out as a performer. You might actually remember him from his stint on Hollywood Squares in the late 90s. If you see Bruce once, you'll never forget him. He's a very distinctive-looking guy. He's got this kind of muppety blonde bob. He wears these glasses with these chunky red frames like Sally Jesse Raphael. And the only thing he ever wears are these t-shirts with these funny and often inappropriate sayings on them. My personal favorite is, "Excuse me, you're standing on my penis." Bruce started as a writer for the Chicago Tribune, and then in 1975 he moved out to Los Angeles and soon became something of a local gay legend. As you'll soon hear, if you're a gay legend, Los Angeles is apparently a very small town. See, Bruce, it turns out, was neighbors with another gay Hollywood legend, Scotty Bowers. Scotty, of course, owned the Hollywood gas station where for decades closeted Hollywood actors like Cary Grant and Rock Hudson would arrange paid trysts with other men, or sometimes even Scotty himself. This is The Originals, and I'm your host, Andrew Goldman. As an interviewer for places like the New York Times Magazine and Vulture, I've interviewed way more celebrities than I care to admit. I found that a lot of stars just don't like to share a lot of themselves. So I created The Originals to interview cultural figures who actually have something to say. Some of them have great dish, others have a few axes to grind, and as you'll soon hear, Bruce Vilanch doesn't disappoint in either of these respects. Bruce is a perfect second guest for this season, which happens to be a proud partnership with Los Angeles Magazine, a publication that may or may not be on newsstands because I haven't been out of the house in several weeks. But subscriptions to Los Angeles Magazine can easily be gotten online at lamag.com. And trust me, support print because you will not like a world without magazines. Bruce Vilanch, welcome to The Originals.
Thank you, darling. I'm thrilled to be here.
We just happened before taping to be talking about Scotty Bowers, who you knew.
I knew. He was my neighbor.
The famous...
Up in Laurel Canyon. One of his hoarder houses was next door.
What's interesting about him is that people attributed his success to, like, his very large penis.
He had a huge penis.
Did you ever see it?
Of course.
Like, Milton, how did...
Well, his penis I saw... Well, he would walk around naked next door, but also you could be hired as a bartender in the 70s when I was out here, and he would come over, and if you ordered, like, an Irish coffee, he would stir his drink with your...
No.
Yeah, he would. Well, he wouldn't stir a Mai Tai because it was cold. So that would not be to his advantage. But if you ordered a lukewarm cocktail, he would put a hot cock in it and stir it.
Would he maybe not put his dick in your drink if you didn't want it in your drink? Or
yeah, of course.
Okay.
There was no unwanted dickage, no unwelcome exhibitionism. But it was kind of like he was the bartender and everybody knew who he was and what he was famous for.
So like baby arm, kind of? I mean,
It was pretty great.
How big was Milton? Do we know? Have people described how big Milton Berle was?
It was. I saw it.
You saw it.
Well, I followed him into the men's room at the Friars Club, and we stood next to each other at the urinal.
And
he said, I'd known him, and he said, "I know what you want." And I just want to see something that was inside Marilyn Monroe, because I was a pig that night. And so there I got to see it. But yeah, I mean, I didn't, nothing happened with it, but it was, a big old log on the fire.
Scotty, bigger than Scotty's? Or
well, it was uncut, Scotty.
Scotty was uncut.
Yeah. And of course, Milton was not. They were both large. You have an unusual interest in this for a podcast.
No, this is not, you've surprised me by telling me you've seen both Milton Berle's and Scotty Bowers' penis, which I think is, I don't know if it's newsworthy, but it's...
When you're a man with a mission, you can say mission accomplished. What I'm interested in. There are people who've seen every Rodin sculpture that's available.
Who else? Who else famously large? I mean,
my God, that's, there's Patrick Swayze.
Really?
Yeah, well, I used to go to his ranch. We'd swim. So, there were those kinds of people.
Bruce didn't spend that much time inspecting or researching Hollywood's largest members. There was a lot of work to do, especially in the early months of every year. See, one of Bruce's longest-lasting gigs was writing for the Oscars. For many, many years, you wrote for the Academy Awards, and then you were the head writer for the Academy Awards.
I was a few times.
For what? This was many years.
Well, I've done 25 of them, and I'm not. I had different titles every year. And
you did?
Yes, I get confused because head writer. I mean, it's you may get a bump in salary when you are the head writer, but essentially every year it's a different configuration because if you have a talk show host hosting it, he brings 12 people with him who write his show every day or her show every day. So there's very little left in the budget to hire other people to write the rest of the show. And if you don't have a talk show host, you have hosts who've never done this before, then you have a bunch of people. And if you have a new producer who has friends who he wants to bring in, then you have them. So every year is a new configuration.
So why, the show for the last couple of years has been hostless, and it seems to be, considering how high profile it is, isn't it hard to get people to host this thing?
Impossible.
Why?
Because if you're big enough to host the Academy Awards, you can only get in your own way. And things that you would do on some other show and not get noticed, everybody notices it when you do on the Academy Awards. David Letterman didn't need to host the show, and he was living with it for years afterwards.
I want to talk about that. Well,
so
hold that thought. I want to show you this just a second.
I've been dying to do something all day, and I think maybe we can take care of this. Oprah? Uma? Oprah? I feel much better.
David Letterman's first time hosting the Academy Awards, what year was that? Let's see. 1995. Did you work on that show? Okay, so he does this, he opens with this Oprah Uma bit. He's recently spoken about it as this, iceberg in his career. That he goes out and he does this Oprah Uma bit. It doesn't work. And this is the moment where he feels like it happens to correspond to the moment where Jay Leno overtakes him and he never catches him again. Jay Leno in the ratings. And he attributes part of it to failing at the Academy Awards. Was it considered a big failure at the time, the appearance?
The day after, yes. In the house, it was actually kind of funny, and you can sort of hear it, although I'm sure that's sweetened because a lot of times
they sweeten the Academy Awards.
Oh yeah,
really?
Oh yeah, they sweeten it live. Mm-hmm.
That's terrible. It's so dirty. I feel
they don't want crickets. They don't want. Nobody wants to sit there and have nothing. But the joke is it sounds so artificial that you can tell it's like watching a sitcom.
It's a bit that didn't work, and he kept referencing it. David Letterman is somebody who leans into failure, and he kind of
he owned it, which was a good thing.
But this was something that you had no fingerprints. This was something that I think Rob Burnett had brought.
This was Rob's idea.
Would you have advised him to do Oprah Uma?
No, I would have said no because I think that it's the Academy Awards, and they are at this point. Uma Thurman in particular, they didn't come there to have their names made fun of by TV Boy. Of all the things that are going to be made, you're going to make fun of my name. It was like we're at that level.
Yeah.
And I thought, no, he's smarter than that. And but his whole style, that was part of his whole style. It probably still is. He was going to do a thing where he gave away a Buick, and this is before Oprah was doing it. We were going to give away a Buick, and Paul Newman was going to win.
Okay.
And the day of the show, Paul Newman said he didn't want to do it.
Really?
And
why? What's...
Because he had a feeling that it was the wrong room.
Paul Newman had a better sense of the room than David Letterman?
Well, Paul Newman's a Hollywood movie star Academy Award winner who's been to an Oscar show before.
Now, David
Letterman was just...
Do you feel like, as somebody who knows this show inside and out, what is going to play in the room, and if only they listened to you, they wouldn't have messed up as badly?
Yes.
No, seriously. Do you feel like
I do, but, what's the point? Because I have no evidence that that's true. I just know what I feel, and I know that when I have occasionally I've cautioned people against doing stuff, and they haven't done it, and they said, "I'm glad I didn't do that thing."
What was the thing? Tell me about it.
Well, I mean, here's the obvious one that comes to mind, and this was not just me. This was a group. This was Billy Crystal as well. We had a joke. Richard Gere was there was a rumor about Richard Gere and a gerbil.
Oh my God!
You may remember this.
I can't believe somebody's even thinking about doing a gerbil joke in the room. But go ahead, please.
In this room, you mean? Or?
No, in that room.
Oh, well, there was a movie that year called An American Tale.
Okay. I'm laughing already.
Fievel the Mouse.
Yes, I'm laughing. Okay.
It's a very big picture. And the joke was Richard Gere is going to present this award with Fievel, but Fievel backed out. So we all screamed. And now we're there, and Richard is on the show. He was on the show presenting like something very serious, like documentary. And he's sitting out there, and we're backstage looking at the monitors. And when you are sitting at the Oscars and you are within camera range and you see a guy coming up the aisle with a camera, you know that it's either your category and that's why they're getting, or something is going to happen involving you that you don't know about.
Yeah. Oh, I assumed that everybody always knew about.
No.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Well, sometimes they do just because for this reason.
Yes.
And we look at Richard. Now, Richard sees the camera, and he knows he's not nominated in this category. And so there's going to be some kind of reference to him. And he's terrified because of what's been going on with the joke, with this gerbil. And so Billy just looks says, "We can't do that joke." He said, "He'll have a heart attack." Look at him. He's pale already. So we had to cut the joke. So that was not where I said we should cut this joke. I wish I could say that I said it, but Billy said it.
Do you think it would have been a mistake?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because it would have been.
Have you read all those articles?
He was there to be embarrassed.
This whole gerbiling thing doesn't actually exist, right? Have we established that that's not actually a thing, or have you heard that this is actually a thing?
Well, I've heard from everybody who knows the nurse who was there, and it never happened.
Wait.
Everybody in Hollywood has somebody who knows somebody.
But it didn't happen.
No, it didn't happen. Somebody's made the whole thing up. But Richard's, version is that the Chinese did it. Is seriously that it was a disinformation campaign. It was to neutralize him because he was, and in fact, on the Oscars, he made a plea to support the Tibet, which was revolting against the Chinese.
Oh my goodness!
And he felt that that was part of the disinformation to make him ridiculous.
Does that sound plausible to you?
Yeah, that sounds very absolutely plausible.
Okay, so I'm sure there's going to be a few geezers out there voting for Bob Hope, a few Johnny Carson fans, a smattering of Steve Martin votes, and maybe there's even an outlier or two who like the Seth MacFarlane show. But for my money, the absolute best Oscars were the Billy Crystal Oscars. Billy Crystal did 9 of them from 1990 to 2012, and Bruce Vilanch worked on every one of them. And one of Bruce's jobs every year was collaborating on Billy Crystal's signature medleys about the Best Pictures nominee. Here's one of my favorites, sung to the tune of the Green Acres theme.
Yep, it's the feel-good death row movie of the year.
The Green Mile. He does a Green Mile shot.
To be Tom Hanks is there, but he can't be.
Were you part of this song?
As he walked his late night watch, the big, tall, dark, and handsome guy grabbed his crotch.
All right. So when I think of the Oscars and I think of like successful Oscar shows, I think about Billy Crystal and I think about him coming out as Hannibal Lecter and I think about, the Jack Palance stuff. Mm-hmm. And these are all things that you were involved in, correct? Mm-hmm. And I think about his these kind of schmaltzy sort of like medleys of where he jokes about. Now, this is like a formula that works.
Yeah.
Why isn't this every year? Why don't we see this every year?
You mean see Billy Crystal doing it?
Well, no, see somebody who can do that, who can do funnies.
Other people, Neil Patrick Harris tried that. He did something akin to that.
Did it work?
I don't think so, but
I can't even remember. He's hosted once, correct?
He has hosted once, yes.
Is that, if we see somebody who's hosted once and of the stature of Neil Patrick Harris, do we assume that means that they weren't particularly successful at it?
Maybe they could be, or they didn't like it. Yeah. They don't want to come back. As I said before, they only get in their own way.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work out, then it's this albatross that you wear for the rest of your career. I mean, Sally Field, you like me, you really like me, just winning something. And she said something on the Oscars, and it lived with her for 20 years. She finally monetized it by doing a Visa commercial using it. But these people are so rich and famous already that they don't need any of that. They don't need to go through all this agita. So it's
And there's no money, right?
There's money, but it's not the kind of money that they make. I mean, it's no one's ever given it to charity, of which I'm aware. But I mean, it's a six-figure thing. But they don't do it for the money. They don't need the money. But they started paying them because it takes, if you're going to do it the way a performer does it, not just kind of come out and say good evening, you're going to spend a lot of time on it. And it's time that you could spend, making a Marvel Comics movie.
Yeah.
So they pay them. But that's the problem, is that the people who are in the tier that you want to have are generally not interested.
Is there somebody elusive that they're always going after who's never said yes?
Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
Always. I mean, he doesn't want to do it. And I think he once said to me, well, they'll never nominate me again if I host the thing. And that I don't think is true, but I just don't think he wanted to do it. I mean, he's always kind of like, he's a big, governor of the Academy. And so he's kind of like, one year Billy was very sick, had like severe migraines, and we were worried whether he would make it, and Tom was the standby. But
Billy, he would have come.
Yeah, he would have come and done it. But Billy rallied, and he was great. But other than
are there people who are politicking to do it? Are there people
Jay Leno tried. He wanted very badly, but I think ABC was not interested in promoting him.
Because you're promoting a star from another network, or just
Which
because
is
they don't
weird.
really,
yeah, I mean, because
really
I'm Johnny
like Jay.
Carson, but I don't even know if it was on ABC. That it might have been on NBC. I wasn't that far back.
You haven't done it for a few years, have you?
I haven't done it officially. I go in unofficially.
What's the difference?
People call me and say help.
Yeah. It's very hard to underestimate how much Bruce actually contributed to forming the public personas of some very famous people. Now, not every Bruce production was entirely successful. It was certainly not Bruce's idea to put Ted Danson in blackface to roast his ex-girlfriend, Whoopi Goldberg, at the Friars Club in 1993. But Bruce did write all of his jokes. A much bigger success was his contribution to Bette Midler's stage persona. He wrote her stage shows, like 1976 Live at Last, and he also introduced Bette Midler to the work of vaudeville Sophie Tucker, who, in the 1920s, would tell surprisingly bawdy jokes on stage. So all those Soph jokes that Bette Midler tells, Bruce's idea.
It was on the occasion of Ernie's 80th birthday. And in honor of the occasion, he married a 20-year-old girl. And he rang me up the very next day and he said to me, Soph, I have just married myself a 20-year-old girl. What do you think of that? And I said to him, Ernie, when I am 80 years old, I shall marry myself a 20-year-old boy. And let me tell you something, Ernie. 20 goes into 80. A hell of a lot more than 80 goes into 20.
You've talked about the layers that you have to deal with in terms of, like, you give somebody lines and it seems like their publicist gets it, their manager. Is it a process where you get when they get to a show or where they get to an appearance, they say something that's totally different and not nearly as good as what you gave them?
Yeah.
Any examples?
You mean when they just make it up as they go along, or
they just screw it? They like step on your best lines for whatever reason. They don't want to offend somebody. I mean,
I had a bad time with Melissa McCarthy, but we've made up.
What happened?
She was in the first flush of her big success, and it was not a televised show. It was the Producers Guild Awards, and we didn't hear from her. And then the night before, a 12-year-old publicist called and said she'd like to see some more 3 different scripts.
Well, you sent her a script and you didn't hear?
We didn't hear it. It was the night before the show. And I said, that's the most unprofessional thing I've ever heard. And then I got a call from the talent booker saying,
3 different, like, I want to choose? I want to, like...
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I said, you said Melissa McCarthy was unprofessional? I said, yes, she was. And I said it to a 12-year-old publicist. I didn't say it to her.
Yeah.
I said, this woman has to deal with her, and she should know this.
Yeah.
And what she was doing was unacceptable. This was,
What was the line? Do you remember what?
I don't remember. It was she was opening the show and had written something funny. And
so she was the host.
No, there was no host. But
okay.
But we opened the show with somebody funny, and they generally are doing one of the comedy categories because they don't want to have a host on the PGA. So she came out, she did the thing, and she just kept like, I don't like that one. Well, that one, Vilanch said that would work, but you don't want to mess with Vilanch. And she was like, I became the punchline for the thing.
Oh,
and I thought that was
Wait, during the show?
Yes.
What?
On the stage. Right. And I said, well, and I thought that was continuing the unprofessionalism. And
did you ever get to express it directly, or did you have to call the 12-year-old publicist and say?
No, I spoke to I let it alone. I spoke to the talent coordinator. And I even saw her when she came off, and we laughed about it. But, I mean, it was... Listen, the world did not shake. It didn't. Nothing mattered. It was just me personally getting that she was mad at me.
Yeah.
Okay. Years went by, and I didn't run into her. And then this year, she was on the show again. And this year she was there with her husband, Ben Falcone, who writes everything for her or with her. And we had this happy kissy reunion.
But isn't that Hollywood? Don't people? It sounds fake.
I guess. No? I mean, I don't think it was. I don't think it registered to her. I think it was. She moved along, which is why she's a star.
Yeah.
And I internalize these things and eat 6 pizzas. But but since you asked, that was that's one of the few bad experiences I've had.
So you were born in Jersey, correct? Or
I was born in New York and came across the river at 4 days when I was adopted.
So 4 days. Do you know anything about your birth parents?
No,
or your birth mother?
No. I just know what my parents told me, which was that they were kids, and it was like a backseat boogie, and there were no means of support, and they were both Jewish. They were both nice Jewish kids, and this was
Jewish,
one of those,
really?
Yeah. Well, they told me that, and of course I didn't believe them. But I always thought every time I went into a Russian restaurant, they would look at me and go, Nostrovia! And I thought, I must be Russian. They must sense something. And then when I finally spit into a cup...
like for 23andMe?
Yeah,
or me,
one of those.
Whatever, yeah.
It came back 99.9% East European Jew.
Really?
And I thought, oh my God, they were telling the truth all the time. It was a shocker because we never assume our parents are telling us the truth. No, they're always fibbing to us because it's in our best interest that we be fibbed to. So
you're adopted into what it sounds like. Now, what town in Jersey?
Patterson.
Just everything that I understand about you, it sounds like it was pretty much an idyllic childhood, no? No trauma?
Oh, I don't know about trauma. I mean, I was an only child, and my parents were very supportive, but my mother was very controlling, and we had a very small family. And I was heavy. I was awkward, not athletic, so I wasn't terribly popular, but I was funny, so I had a certain following. And also, the bullies left me alone because I was funny. But
you were. Am I crazy to think that you were a young plus-size model, which I didn't.
I had a brief tenure at Lane Bryant when they were introducing a line called Charming Chubs, which was a children's line. And if you graduated they were planning Stylish Stouts, which was going to be the next one. It didn't happen because they just couldn't get these fat women to take their fat children to Lane Bryant. I guess, I don't know. They didn't want to admit.
I thought there was no trauma, but actually modeling for that might have actually been sort of traumatic.
No, that was fun. Any chance I got to show off. After I would spending a day making faces in the mirror. I was very happy performing, and my parents saw that. My mother was kind of stage struck. She wasn't Mama Rose stage struck, but she was. Well, Mama Rose was a pro. My mother was not. She was a fabulous amateur.
Now, when you were growing up, did you immediately know that you liked boys?
I liked everything. I liked boys and I liked girls, and I knew that. The process of maturing was realizing when I was in college that any woman I was that interested in deserved more than a guy who was going to run off to the Greyhound station and try to find true love.
Yeah.
And so I chose. And I used to laugh when they'd say, well, homosexuality is a choice. I said, yeah, well, I chose to be my true self. I chose to be authentic.
But were you actually attracted? I mean, was it kind of like, did you
see
it as
I'm still attracted to both of them. I mean, I am a functioning bisexual, but I don't exercise it. And frankly, I don't think most bisexuals exercise it. I think once you're 25, you know what you like.
Is it because, I mean, I think if I were bisexual, I would find that I would probably have a much easier time having sex with men because men.
Yeah, because men like to have sex.
Yeah.
And it's a different thing. There's a different instinct. With women, it's about procreating and.
So was that
nurture? I mean, we're different. We're two different sides of the species.
Yeah. So does that explain the choice, or were you did you feel like you were more attracted to men than women?
Oh, I was I was more attracted to men than I was to women, and I suppose women were more complicated. And I was lazy.
Was your mom understanding? Your dad? Were you out to them?
I wasn't out. I mean, I think they knew. I mean, what happened was I'm of the Vietnam generation, and I was drafted. First, there was a lottery, and my lottery number was 156, which was the same exit as the Garden State Parkway exit to Patterson, ironically enough.
I don't even know. I'm sorry. I know people think I'm older than I am. Is 156 high or low?
It's high. I mean, it's closer to getting drafted.
Oh, it is.
So is that higher or lower?
I don't know. Well, I always thought like if you got like a 1, you were screwed.
1 is screwed, and then 365, you're kind of safe.
Okay. Okay.
So I was drafted. I had to go down there and do the physical. At the time, there was a thing at the physical that said there was a questionnaire, and the first thing that you filled out when you got there, and one of the questions was, are you a practicing homosexual? Mm-hmm. And if you checked the box, that you were immediately almost immediately disqualified. And it was the ritual was called checking the box. And I checked the box. And then they took me off to a psychiatrist who they had there, an Army psychiatrist. And his job was to discern whether or not you were actually a practicing. So the first thing he said to me is, are you a practicing homosexual? Mm-hmm. I said, no, I've got it down.
Did you really?
I absolutely did.
Really?
What are you talking? Of course I did. This is what I do for a living.
So you were funny from the yeah.
Well, when you look like this, it's your armor. The next step was he then would ask you a series of unbelievably specific, disgusting questions about gay sex. Because they wanted to make sure that you weren't a straight guy faking it.
Right.
But after a few of those questions, he said, okay, well, this is going to disqualify you from the service. And not only that, but it's going to cue the drums, go on your permanent record.
No shit, really?
Yeah. That was something they used to threaten you with all the time. This is
kidding.
going to
Like
go
the
on your
government?
permanent record.
What,
yeah. Well, what it meant was you would not be hired when your prospective employer went to the Defense Department to check your service record, which was a big thing in those days. Red alarms would go off.
Was this something actually, this is at any point would have affected somebody's career in entertainment? Or is this if you're going to work for Boeing?
That's what I felt. I thought that I would never work for anybody for whom this would make a difference. Because I figured one way I'll find something to do that will be in show business. And I knew all of these queens who were in show business. And I'm sure they all had, I didn't have a record of any sort.
Yeah.
And so I thought, this is not going to be something that I care about.
Yeah.
But it was a legitimate question. My parents asked me the same thing. When I said to them, I'm going to check the box, they didn't say why. They just said, well, it's true, right? You wouldn't do it. You wouldn't fake it.
So this is when you came out to them, essentially.
Yeah. So I said, no, it's true. And they said, yeah, we thought so.
Yeah.
They were two bright people. Yeah. And they,
were they, it was a long time ago. Were they understanding? Did you feel?
Yeah, absolutely. Very much.
Well, you're lucky, I guess.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Very lucky.
Right?
I was very lucky because I know a lot of people. When I went to college, I met a lot of people from the Midwest because I was in Columbus, Ohio for 5 years, who had horror stories about this. And to this day, I meet people who have horror stories.
Yeah. What was the first dollar you made being funny?
That's a great question. Well, I guess it was stuff that I wrote. I wrote funny things for newspapers and magazines, and I don't remember the actual first dollar. I remember the first real money I made. And I remember that because my father died shortly after that. And I was writing the Donnie and Marie show. And I was being very well paid. And my father had always done my taxes because he was a math whiz. And he didn't trust anybody else to do his taxes. He did his own. And he was very smart. And he saw the Donnie and Marie show. And as per usual, I sent him all of my information, my financial stuff. And he called me and said, you're going to have to hire an accountant because this is more complicated and you're actually making real money.
Oh, my God.
And there was something about his voice when he said it that was like, the pride was in the voice. It was like, because an issue that we had was always, we love that you want to do this in show business, but we want you to make a living. Yeah. And that was why they had sort of nudged me into journalism, because newspapers will never die.
Tell me about it, yeah.
Who knew?
Yeah.
Who knew the universe would take care of that? But so I thought, and then he got sick and went very quickly after that. But it was kind of amazing because he got to see me to the point where he had to say he's a success.
So many people are not that lucky.
I know. Oh, please! It was. It was a great moment. I mean, I'm remembering it now, and it was 100 years ago.
So how long did Donnie and Marie, was that your first big staff writing job?
No, I was on the Brady Bunch Variety Hour.
Well, we're going to talk about, I cannot wait to talk about the Brady Bunch Variety Hour.
I think my favorite part of Bruce's professional biography is his contribution to some of the weirdest television shows ever created. If you're a Los Angeles magazine reader and you live in the state of California, where the marijuana trade is perfectly legal, I highly recommend, if you're still stuck inside, taking 3 hours of your day, getting super, super high, going to YouTube, and seeking out these 3 variety shows that Bruce worked for that we're about to talk about. You got to start with 1976's Brady Bunch Variety Hour. It came 2 years after the Brady Bunch show went off the air. The idea was that the show hoped to capitalize on this touring stage show that the Brady kids were doing at state fairs across the country.
But when you hear fracture, the guitar scratching, then you know that rhythm carries all the action.
Apologies to Barry Williams, to Schulz and Olsen, to the rest of the Brady Bunch actors, but none of them, with the exception of Florence Henderson, had any business being on stage singing and dancing. Yet, the concept of the show was that the Brady Bunch moves to this house in Malibu that has this huge pool so that they can become entertainers. And for some bizarre reason, there are showgirls in their pool doing synchronized swimming. Yes, the thing is absolutely nuts. Perhaps the most nuts part of it, however, is that the Jan Brady singing and dancing looks nothing like the original Jan from the show.
Okay, I want to describe what we just saw. We just saw all of the members of the Brady Bunch, with the exception of Jan. Well, Jan is not on. There's a fake Jan.
There's fake Jan.
What's fake?
The legendary fake Jan. Jerry Reichel is the real Jan. Eve Plum. After in the interim between the end of the Brady Bunch,
it's like only 2 years we're talking about, or
it's
something.
Like 2 years, but there probably had been something like a Brady Bunch TV movie, or there was some other thing that extended the life of them. And of course, the Brady Bunch network show was in reruns constantly after it went off the network. So Eve, in the course of this time, had gotten a TV movie called Dawn, Portrait of a Teenage Runaway. It was a huge hit.
Really?
Yes, I called her Eve, I've got a 40 share Plum, because her ratings were insane. They did a sequel to it, Alexander, The Other Side of Dawn. And she was in that too. And so she didn't want to go back to being Jan. She thought she was going to continue a career as a TV movie star, which did not pan out.
Right.
But we had to get another Jan when we were doing the Brady Bunch Variety Hour. And so it came down to, there were 2 girls, I remember the rehearsal, Jerry Reichel, and the other girl was named Kathy, and I forget her last name, but it didn't matter because she married one of the Hiltons and became Kathy Hilton.
I read this.
And
Kathy Hilton could have been fake Jan.
And gave birth to Paris Hilton and Nikki Hilton. So she could have been fake. And whenever I see her, we laugh about it. I mean, that this was fake Jan, Was it fake? What's the word for like fake orgasm? There's a word.
Now, when I watched this, it was like, it's a little like being on drugs, because there's all of the Brady Bunch in there, except for fake Jan, and they're all frequently in like, kind of leisure suits and like...
well, it was hysterical. It was 1977, and the show was very meta. It was about the Brady family becoming entertainers. See, it was the model for it was the Jack Benny show, which was always about Jack Benny living in Beverly Hills and doing a television show every week. And the guest stars would come to the house, or it would always, something was involved. That there was a core story. And in this one, there was a core story interrupted by the numbers.
It's considered a curiosity now. I don't think people look at it and say it's a great show.
Really? You don't think so? Huh?
I don't want to step on any toes here. But really, I mean, when you were doing the show, when you're doing it, do you think like? I think when you're involved in anything, do you have to believe like what you're doing is great, or when you were doing this, you like this is just so weird?
Well, I think it's that. I think as people who were in Cats, the movie. what they thought they were doing, some breakthrough, brilliant piece of work. And it was like, it could go either way. Yeah. It's either the biggest turd you've ever seen, or it's brilliant and it's a key to the new direction. But in our case, we knew it was ridiculous. I mean, first of all, it was 1977. We were all chemically altered.
What was it cocaine then?
There was coke. There was everything. I mean, there were, everything, LSD. I mean, it was psychotropic, whatever, you name it.
But in the workplace.
There was fruit salad, we called it.
Fruit salad?
That was at parties. Fruit salad was you go into a party and there'd be a big bowl full of pills and you would just say, what'll I take? It helped to know what they looked like.
Interesting. It sounds like that could go really badly.
And did many times. It was, never too far from the ER.
So this was Marcia at that point. She was having her own chemical issues, wasn't
she? Was. Maureen was, she was deeply into different stuff. But she always functioned. I mean, she was sometimes a little crazy and sometimes AWOL, but she writes in books and stuff. And
you know what I sort of loved about the show is that these people are professionals. They are giving it their all. Mike Brady's out there dancing very badly, but seems to be trying his best.
Well, of course.
And everybody is out there bringing it.
Yes.
They're professionals.
They are, exactly.
And I find that, I find it heartwarming, these people going out there. And
I don't think nobody sets out to do the worst show ever except, Max Bialystock and Leopold Bloom.
Right.
They're the only ones who ever did that. But everybody wants it to work. And you never know. You think, well, this is so crazy, it just might work.
Yeah.
So everybody was, they were at the top of whatever game they had at the time. Florence was terrific because Florence was really, really, really talented. And so she got to sing a lot, not just because she was a star, but because it was good when she did it.
One thing that I found really interesting is now Ann B. Davis, who played Alice, was, I don't know if she was like as religious when she was doing the show, but she's like became a very religious Episcopalian.
She came from a commune. She was living in Denver on a commune. I think she was Lesbians for Jesus.
So it was she was a bit of a Jesus freak?
Yeah. Oh. But she never visited that on any of us.
I didn't realize she was a lesbian.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that she visited on us, not me, but.
So if you're a lesbian for Jesus, do you have to give up the lesbian part?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I am neither a lesbian nor for Jesus, so it's a tough one for me to answer.
But interesting that she's a lesbian, because did they bring Rip Taylor in to be her love interest?
Absolutely. He was the heir to Sam the Butcher.
Just out of curiosity, why would you bring somebody who was so flamboyantly gay in to be Alice's boyfriend?
Because it was a funny flavor, and especially if Alice was going to have somebody, it would probably be somebody crazy.
Yeah.
Because you didn't need another stolid white guy on the show. You had a whole family full of stolid white guys.
Yeah. In 1976, the same year as the Brady Bunch Variety Hour, Bruce wrote on the infamous Paul Lynde Halloween special. Paul Lynde was a guy who got famous from Broadway and from his role on TV's Bewitched, but he'll forever be remembered for his suggestive jokes that he told from the center square on Hollywood Squares. There were lines kind of like this one.
True or false? Some airlines now give you a thorough frisking before permitting you to board the plane.
Well, that's the only reason I fly.
The Paul Lynde special is an exceptionally weird show. It feels like a dream that you might have had when you ate like a whole pizza by yourself right before you went to bed. So, in this scene, you got to get your head around it. It's Paul Lynde, who's in a sequin black tux, is being introduced to all the members of KISS, who are, of course, in their full makeup and all a foot taller than Paul in their elevator boots. And he's being introduced to them by Margaret Hamilton, whose voice is going to be very familiar because she played the Wicked Witch of the West in The Wizard of Oz, and she is, of course, dressed as the Wicked Witch of the West.
Come on, Margaret. I've always wanted to meet KISS. Hi, fellas. Yeah, just what I've always wanted. 4 kisses on the first date.
Well, your good friend sure has a weird sense of humor.
Does your mother know what you're doing? Margaret, you haven't introduced me to your friends.
Oh, forgive me. This is Ace, this is Jean, this is Peter, and this is Paul.
Oh, I love a good religious group. I can take one look at you four, and I can tell you how you got your name and how you got your act. You had a fight, and your mother's told you to kiss and make up. And your makeup is something else. How long does it take you to put it on?
We don't wear makeup.
I don't you push the down button on your elevator shoes?
Now, Hollywood Squares had, like, historically was like the gayest thing on TV, right? I mean, there's always like it was a
well, Liberace was the gayest thing on TV,
okay,
but you're too young to remember.
Good point. But I mean, there was a very but
there was always a gay presence all the time. If it wasn't Paul, it was Richard Simmons, it was Rip Taylor, it was Billy DeWolf, it was there were Wally Cox, there were all of these sort of professionally fey, Richard Deacon. There was always somebody around.
Yeah.
And I inherited that mantle.
Did you mention once Dom DeLuise?
Dom DeLuise. He was there.
No, was Dom DeLuise maybe...
He was married and had children, and he was gay.
Oh, I didn't realize this.
He was married and children, and he liked guys, too.
Did he like guys more?
I don't know.
But did he... I'd always heard that it just seems so unlikely, but that he and Burt Reynolds were in love.
I don't know. I doubt that they were in love. I think that Burt got a huge kick out of him, and Burt was... a strange guy anyway. Burt was also in love with women, but I think he also he was very homo-friendly. If maybe in his early days he had some experiences. I don't know that he was... in my experience, he was not out there doing anything with any guys.
But Paul Lynde, I mean, he was similar to his persona, but you never hear like great things about Paul Lynde as a human being.
He was a tortured guy. He was tortured. He wanted to be a big star, and he was a big star, but not the way he wanted to be. He wanted to carry movies, and his character was a flavor. He would come in and do a joke and be hysterical and then leave, and there wasn't a lot of depth there. Mm-hmm. There wasn't something that he could hold on to do something else with, like Tony Randall, who had a similar facility, but who also was a real actor. Paul was a great performer.
You know, it's interesting because Paul Lynde, as a kid, he was a very fat kid, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that was part of that affected his psychology?
I'm sure it affected mine. And he drank a lot, and I think who knows where that comes from, but it certainly could come from that.
He was mean drunk, right?
He was a very mean drunk. Yeah.
What's the meanest thing have you ever seen?
Oh, he would go on anti-Semitic rants,
what did the Jews ever do to Paul Lynde?
Well, what did the Jews ever do to anybody? I mean...
He must have known you were Jewish, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, his representatives were Jewish, and, I mean, he had lots of Jews.
Would he go on rants to... Would he call you... Would he say anti-Semitic things to you? Like, specifically about you? I hate you, you Jew bastard? That
you
sort of...
lousy kike, why are you giving me this shit? Yeah, sure. And I thought he was
What do you say to Paul Lynde when he calls you a lousy kike?
I just thought I would just say, you... Goyish a fag. Let's go off and suck a pickle. I mean, I didn't take it seriously. I mean, because I knew him, and his other people were terrified by him because his attack was so strong.
Was he particularly anti-Semitic because Jews run Hollywood, and he thought that they were probably...
Probably. I just think it was something that came up when he drank.
Yeah. This also would probably be not considered... I mean, it's a very, very interesting thing to watch, but also probably not like your proudest accomplishment, right? It's the show.
The show I loved. I mean, the show was... well, and people still do. I mean, as bizarre and clunky as it is, we had a great time doing it.
Did he love it? Did he, when he's dressed up as the witch, is he like, I'm on top of the showbiz world here?
No, I don't think he thought that, but I think that he thought that he was having a good time. I mean, I knew he was having a good time. He didn't quite know who Kiss were.
What?
The Kiss was the big band, and they came on the thing and said, "Who are they?" And I said, "That's Kiss." And I said, "That's Kiss." And he just said, "Kiss? Yeah, I hardly know you." I said, "No, that's the name of the band." And he says, "I want to meet the guy with the tongue."
I've heard this story once, but you hung around with Paul Lynde.
Yeah.
And there was a particular sighting on the lot that
it was we were shooting at the old Prospect and Talmadge lot in Hollywood, Los Feliz sort of. And ABC was there, and Roots was an ABC show, not shot there, but they did all the ABC local shows. Mm-hmm. And LeVar Burton, of course, was the star of Roots, and Roots, it's hard to describe to people who weren't there the impact that this show had, because when Roots aired, it was a 3-network world. Mm-hmm. And so routinely, in order to stay on the air, you had to have at least a third of the entire United States TV audience watching you. And Roots had about 2/3. I mean, it was a massive turnout, and it was a tremendously impactful experience for people to see something about slavery, as milquetoast as it was compared to later depictions. It was amazing, and of course elevated everybody, especially LeVar Burton, who was unknown. So we were doing the Halloween special, and you couldn't smoke on the stage, so we were outside smoking, because we all smoked in those days. Mm-hmm. And Paul was outside, and he was wearing some sort of weird Dracula cape, something like that. And LeVar Burton was doing a talk show on the lot, and he walked by, and Paul recognized him, and of course he had seen him and on the show, but he could not remember his name. And LeVar Burton sort of looked at him, and Paul wanted to acknowledge him, and he just pointed at him and said, "Roots!" I thought LeVar Burton was going to die. He just screamed with laughter, because it was he absolutely knew what was going on. I mean, because he was unknown on Thursday, and by the next Thursday, he was one of the biggest stars in the business.
He was Roots.
He was Roots! Exactly.
I want to share something really disgusting with you. Now, just listen to this and see if you can possibly imagine what horrible organism could conjure such obscene noises. Any idea what that was? Well, here's the answer. This is what Wookiees sound like, apparently, when they're in the holiday spirit. What you just heard was a scene from 1978's Star Wars Holiday Special, which Bruce wrote on. It is famously bad, and I mean it is psychedelically weird, and one of the primary reasons that I just have to imagine that George Lucas must have nearly had a stroke when YouTube was invented. Before I let you go, we have to talk about Star Wars.
The Star Wars Holiday Special.
Holiday Special. Yeah. And it was...
It was...
an opportunity, I guess, to show Wookiees on TV.
There's a good justification.
I have to say, I don't know if you experienced this, but I just watched it today. Chewbacca... I never considered Chewbacca like a very sort of attractive being, but when you look at his family was really ugly.
Oh,
that kid! It's hard to look at these what one's called Itchy or something, and
Chewie. Chewie was What was the kid was Itchy? It's a very good question. I forgot.
Why do you think George Lucas thought that anybody would? Okay, first of all, Wookiees. Was there ever so? When you see the show, the first thing you notice is that these Wookiees have to basically do a mime because they don't translate the Wookiee language. So you have a very basic story that these Wookiees are performing, which is, I guess, that they miss Chewie and they don't know where he is. And so the baby, they're looking at photos of him. Is it a challenge as a writer to come in and write for Wookiees?
Well, George had he was about to start shooting The Empire Strikes Back, which was the second movie. And this was in between. This was to keep people interested, to keep the franchise alive between the release of the first one and the second one. And because, it was, as I said before, a 3-network universe. So it would be a big promotional thing. And it featured the Wookiees. They were the leads, which was unfortunate because they speak no known language. And at the time, ironically, nobody would let us use subtitles because they said nobody will read subtitles. Now, the Star Wars movies are about half subtitles. Yeah. The Mandalorian is subtitles. Anyway, so we had to invent things. So we had guest stars. We had Art Carney, who was a traveling Tupperware salesman who goes to Mrs. Chewbacca and is the Morris, what I call Morris the Explainer. She'll say something, and he'll say, "Oh, I'm sorry, you're feeling ill." Or, "Oh, I'm sorry, the shoes don't fit." "Well, listen, I have another pair in the truck." And he was explaining, "Where's Chewie?" "Oh, he's coming. Oh, Life Day is coming."
I brought you something special, shortstop. You want it? You got it. Happy Life Day. I love to make a Wookiee happy.
And it was the story was that he was off on the Millennium Falcon with Han Solo and Luke and Leia, and they were on their way home for Life Day, the big holiday George invented that he thought would be Festivus for the rest of us.
I couldn't figure out what Life Day was.
Life Day was to celebrate, it was a universal Christmas. It was to celebrate life all over and joy and happiness. But it was apparently a Wookiee tradition, which had seeped into the rest of the universe. And they were on their way home, but they were being chased by Y-wing fighters, and they were, Imperial stormtroopers. And they detoured on Tatooine, where the cantina.
And who appears? And let me show you this clip right now.
B. Arthur.
Yes, and she sings this sort of, I guess, like it's a Brechtian
it's
kind of.
It's a Brechtian song because the Brecht estate would not let her sing the Brecht-Weill song. She wanted to sing the Alabama song.
Oh.
And
that's why it sounds like Brecht, because you actually...
Yes, Ken and Mitzi Welch wrote a Brechtian song for her to sing.
If there's a light in the place, we may not thrive, friend, but we survive, friend. Look, we're alive, friend, you and I. So say goodnight, friend. Good night, but not goodbye.
Now, the show's ridiculous. It's patently ridiculous.
Yeah. It's insane, and it's chemically induced, I'm convinced.
Really? Were there chemicals involved?
It was the 70s, 1977, 78. Okay. It was the drugs from the Brady Bunch were still around.
Now, George Lucas has distanced himself and said, I had nothing to do with it. I let these people... Now, is that true? That he basically...
Partially.
Yes.
Partially. He was there at the beginning. He was around. He did, at a certain point, leave to go off and do other things. But he had laid the groundwork for everything. And he knew what he was getting into, but I don't think he really knew what he was getting into. Because he had not been accustomed... I don't think he watched network television specials unless Linda Ronstadt was on them.
Why do you say?
Because they were having an affair.
Oh, I didn't realize this.
So I think that maybe...
Was he married at the time?
Probably.
All right, great.
He didn't watch network television specials, so he didn't know what they consisted of. He didn't know about cross-plugging, where you would put... B. Arthur starred on Maude.
Oh my God, cross-plugging. I thought this was, for a second, I was like, oh my God.
A sexual thing?
Sexual term, cross-plugging.
That's the gerbils again.
Okay.
He was unaware of how these things were put together, and the one thing he was concerned about was the animated Boba Fett section, which was the one thing that Star Wars people remember.
Well, this was the introduction, the first time anybody ever sees Boba Fett, right?
The first time anybody had seen Boba Fett. And I liked Star Wars, but I wasn't I wasn't an addict. I wasn't a Star Wars-ophile.
Yeah.
And we had to do a show with a lot of variety elements in it, and we were handed these characters to use with. And there was always a dichotomy, if that's the word I'm looking for, between the earnestness of the Star Wars story, which is a real science fiction Saturday morning serial kind of thing, and a variety show, which was like tits and feathers. And what happened was, it aired. It got the mixed reviews. It got a decent rating, and then it went away. And then the internet happened, and it surfaced on the internet. And this generation of people who had grown up watching now 3 Star Wars movies on home video, who were never even around when we did the show, discovered this thing, and they said, how could he do this? How could he betray us like this? Because by then Star Wars had become a religious phenomenon.
Right.
And that was when he made the remark, when I think Vanity Fair interviewed him and said he'd like to smash every copy of it, because they were literally tapes that people would do off the internet.
Do you think that to the stars that it seemed particularly ridiculous compared to the other work they'd been doing in Star Wars? Did they think that this is...
They didn't want to do it, and they did it. They gave it a day. They each gave them one day where we shot everything of theirs.
Who wanted to do it least?
Harrison. I mean,
what do you remember? Was he just grumpy?
Yeah, he was happy to be there. He was there. He was there, and he didn't. He did everything that was required of him, and he didn't balk and all of that.
And this must have been during
Carrie wanted to sing. She wanted to do a number, and
what happened?
Well, she wanted to sing Joni Mitchell's song, "I Wish I Had a River."
Can you sing that? I don't know
holiday song. It's coming on Christmas. It's getting pretty green.
Cutting down trees, they're putting up reindeer and singing songs of joy and peace. Oh, I wish I had a river I could skate away on.
But you'd have to change the words to Life Day.
You would have to. It was a holiday thing, and she was gonna. We never got that far. I said, "Well, that's a great idea, but you call Joni Mitchell and tell her you want to do it."
Yeah.
And so we called Joni Mitchell.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and she listened to it and she went, "Ah, no."
And Carrie was. I think that Carrie. That was a drug period for Carrie too.
Oh,
correct?
Please, we were good friends, and we were both. We were snorting the sweet and low. I mean, we were. Yeah. Although she was into it more seriously than I have to say, but she's it was. But everybody was on something. I mean,
Did you ever have a drug problem, or
no,
did you always kept?
No, I enjoyed things, but I never was an addict, and I wasn't. I don't have that disease, and I never wanted to be that out of control.
Yeah.
So they came in and they did what they were going to do, and they did what they had to shoot the one day, along with Peter Mayhew, who was Chewbacca, and. That was it. They were fine. They weren't enthusiastic about it. They had kind of been inveigled into it. I don't know what George gave them to entice them. But other than that, they knew they were on the cusp of something that was going to go on for a long time, a serial thing, because it was the beginning of like crazy sequelitis, where the marquee began to look like a ball score. Jaws 4, Star Wars 3, audience nothing.
Bruce Vilanch, I can't tell you how much I have enjoyed speaking with you.
Thank you.
You are a great guest. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's the show. Thanks for listening. If you liked it, or even if you didn't, please subscribe and rate highly. This episode was produced by myself, Andrew Goldman, as well as the incomparably talented Rob Heath. Special thanks go out to Mayor Rashawn at Los Angeles Magazine, as well as Titan of Publicity, Drew Kerr. The Originals is, as always, a highly replaceable production.